Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 468.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because here's the thing. I know something about you. In fact, you could say I know many things about you. One, you continue to listen, and we thank you for that. You continue to share episodes, and we thank you for that. But here's the thing I also know. I know that you want your business to grow, whether it's growing from zero because you just got started, or whether you're at the 6-figure mark and you're like, cool, I'm ready for 7, or whether you're at 7 and you're ready for 8. Here's what I know. You want your business to grow. And oftentimes when we're ready for growth, well, or at least we think we're ready and we find out on the way that we may not be ready. Did you know that there's a specific structure necessary for making sure your business is able to grow? And if you didn't, that's why you're going to pay attention today. Because I have with me none other than Michael Zipursky. You may know him from consultingsuccess.com. You may know him because he is the CEO of consultingsuccess.com. But most importantly, he has also advised organizations like the Financial Times, Dow Jones, RBC, Omron, Sumitomo, and helped Panasonic launch new products in global markets. But more importantly, he's helped over 300 consultants from around the world in over 50 industries add 6 and 7 figures to their annual revenues. This is code for he knows how to make stuff happen. And that's why you're going to pay attention today, because you want to make stuff happen. You want to take your widget and your what's it and grow it. And I think we've got the individual who knows it. So take out that pad, take out that pen. Do the things that you know you need to do to make sure that you pay attention and or bookmark those sections, because I have a feeling we're going to learn a lot today as we listen to Michael Zipursky. Michael, how you doing?
I'm terrific, Jay. Great to be with you.
I appreciate you making the time because you're a busy guy.
I am, yeah. I know you are too. I mean, most of us that are making things happen tend to be fairly busy.
That is very, very true. Now, with this being the first time that you are here, I need to ask you the same question that I tend to ask everybody else the first time that they're here. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, the Hulk, etc. Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, there was a time where you could say that as an entrepreneur, you can envision yourself like flying around town, maybe even wearing a cape, but using your products and services to save customers. And at the same time, as a superhero does, an entrepreneur has a beginning. I mean, if you think about Spider-Man, for example, there was a time he was just a kid going to school, taking some photos, trying to make some money and get some good grades. That's it. And then one day something special happens to him and he discovers, oh my goodness, I have special powers and I get to use them for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before the work that you have done being appearing in Huffington Post or Financial Times, Fox Business, before your book, The Elite Consulting Mind, and the other books you have written, before the 300 consultants we talked about, and all of the industries and the places that you've been and the things that people know you for today, what we want to know is, who is Michael Zipursky?
Well, of course, I'm invincible. You know,
I like that.
Don't all of us when we're young think that we are, right?
Yeah,
really,
my son for sure.
Yeah, I think, I grew up feeling like an outsider, actually, when I was quite young, my family kind of uprooted us and moved us to the Middle East. So I spent about 4.5 years there. I came back to North America, had to learn how to kind of speak English because that wasn't really my first language. And though I believe I was a pretty popular kid throughout my early years, I always kind of felt like an outsider because I had grown up in a different culture and different environment, different language, and so forth. So that's really kind of where I began. My early years, I was very focused on sports. I excelled in that area. And I think that those two combined, feeling kind of like an outsider from an early age and also playing sports, I was very competitive. And that's something that served me well throughout, my later years and even to the present. Anytime I put my mind to something, whether it was in university or on the field, it was never a question, still is never a question of, can I achieve it? It's just a matter of how am I going to achieve it and what do I need to make that happen?
Got it. Now, you started by saying you were uprooted. And what's interesting to me is I haven't been able to determine your accent. So I'm going to say uprooted from where? Because it's a mixture. I'm like, where is he from?
Well, so here's the thing, right? I'll get this as I was in college. I'd spent the whole year kind of surrounding myself with friends and people that I'd met in different classes. And we were studying for the final exams, just a few weeks kind of left in the school year. And a couple of people that were sitting beside me said, "Hey, by the way, like, where are you from?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, like, where are you from? And you have an accent. I said, "Like, what are you talking about?" I'm Canadian. This is in Vancouver at that time. And I said, I'm from here. But clearly, I really, I'm not. I feel more international than I do necessarily Canadian. I was born in Toronto. My parents moved my sister and I to Israel when I was 2 years old. I spent from about 2 to 6.5 living in Israel, and then moved to Vancouver at that time. And so I didn't speak English. I didn't really know anyone in Vancouver aside from my cousin Sam and his family, but I didn't have any friends or any real network. So that's kind of how I got started. And then I ended up studying different languages throughout school, but I also moved to Japan and built consulting businesses over there. So I speak Japanese and I lived there for several years.
Okay, so if we're compiling the list, we've got, I'm assuming, English because you're doing good right now, and then we've got Japanese, and I'm going to assume Arabic too.
No, Hebrew.
Hebrew. Okay.
Yeah. And then I studied French in school.
And then okay, got it. I assumed French as well. All right, now that makes sense. So it's a mixture of all of those things. Well, in addition to your other languages, what I hear is that you also you speak the language of business very well. But before we go down there, you mentioned sports, and because I always believe there are a couple of classes of individuals that have an advantage in business. Artists, for sure. Including, the paints, the musicians, actors, etc. But I also think sports individuals have a very unfair advantage, because one of the things that I believe happens in a lot of sports is that you get to practice at failing. You get to practice at failing, which is a skill set that a lot of us have lost. So I'm curious to know which sport it is that you call yours.
Yeah, well, actually, I would maybe just respond to that and say that I think it's actually a very fair advantage, because anyone that's put their time into sports knows it's not easy, knows that it requires a lot of dedication, hard work, commitment, and so anyone that has that advantage, I think they've earned it. But my sports kind of resembles my languages in that I started off at a young age playing soccer, then I played baseball, then I did rugby. Then I did a little bit of basketball, but really where I kind of rose up to the highest levels was in track and field. I was very competitive in that, was at a point where, was starting to look at taking scholarship opportunities to go to a U.S. university. I was in high school, and I was, winning many of the city championships and so forth. But there was one guy kind of in our state championships, or we call them provincials, who I could never beat. He was always number one and I was number two. His name is Dylan Armstrong, and he went on to actually win bronze for Canada at the Olympics.
Well, I would say that that's not a bad person to come number 2 behind.
There you go. And so when you're talking about like superheroes at the beginning of this episode, I would say that Dylan Armstrong to me was the Hulk. I mean, I was not a small kid in high school, but he was a giant, and I haven't seen him for many, many years. But I just remember looking at that guy and going, "Wow, like where does he come from?"
Right? Like what are you eating? Because I don't understand. Aren't we both human? I totally hear you there, because growing up playing basketball, definitely had my fair share of how did you do that? I don't even understand. Your body's not supposed to move like that, but okay, yours did. Now, with all that being said, though, and we'll take your fair advantage into play, what I would love to know is how do we go from track and field to consultingsuccess.com? Because I think there's a path there and a journey that would be interesting to hear.
Sure. So, I was sports was my whole life up until my final year in university. I ended up going over to Southeast Asia, with initially a trip with my father and stepmother. That opened my eyes to just a whole new world. I came back, stopped doing sports, got into arts, photography, music, poetry, all that kind of stuff. And then my cousin Sam and I had decided, we've been like brothers since we were young, and we decided that we would actually go back to Southeast Asia. So we spent about a month plus in Vietnam. This was when I was, pretty young, 16 or so years old. And at that time, we decided that we would do a business together. And so when we got back, we started.
Hold on, at 16. I just want to make sure that's clear.
That is correct.
Oh, yeah, okay, perfect.
It required a lot of persuasion and making my case like a lawyer would to my parents to allow me to go. And I don't know why they did, but they did. So that was just an amazing experience, at that age to go there. And Sam's older than I am. At that time he was probably 19, so still a young guy. But it really made a profound impact.
I just want to make sure I heard this correctly.
Yeah.
A 19-year-old and 16-year-old together in a foreign country.
Yep, in Vietnam, and it had only been open for a decade or so to foreigners at that time. So it was quite an experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, please keep going. This is good.
Yeah, Jay, your listeners are probably going like, I thought this is a show about business and making money, and we're talking about like travel and languages. What's going on?
But
in
it
this episode?
is. It's because it's all connected. I've seen so many times with the hundreds of entrepreneurs that we've gone through, where you've been, how you grew up, the things that you influenced you young, play into. Oh, that's how they were able to make their transition. That's how they are the way they are today. And if we skip that, then often what happens is we're left feeling, what's wrong with me? And that's why we've got to have this story. But this is a unique thing in Vietnam with 2 teenagers. I'm like,
sure.
Okay.
So we decided we were going to actually start a music label was kind of our initial thinking. That didn't last very long, even though we both are big fans of music. Mm-hmm. We actually ended up starting a web design and development consultancy. And so that happened just when I was finishing up high school. And we worked with some clients in there. Sam was really focused on the design and branding and web side of it. I was focused on the marketing, the communications, the client kind of account management side. Learned a lot of lessons from that business. It was a great kind of initial experience for us to run that business together. And then we started another consulting business at that time called Kanke Culture. Kanke in Japanese means relationship. And that was where we started to get a lot more into branding and marketing communications as a consulting business. So we worked with some local clients, but I ended up actually moving to Japan not long after that. And that's where we started to work with companies like Panasonic and Dow Jones Japan and Financial Times Japan and Sumitomo and Panasonic and a whole bunch of others. So essentially set up the branch office for our business over there, work with some very large, $1 billion plus organizations, helping them to market and communicate more effectively into English speaking markets. And you want to jump in or?
Well, actually, here's what's going through my head. Here's something that's unique. That's not about your story that we've not heard a whole lot is, it sounds like you went straight into this consulting world, and that's literally where you planted yourself. You didn't take a journey through other types of business models. You went straight into consulting and just like, hey, I like this. That's unique.
I would say that's true. I mean, I did a whole bunch of random jobs when I was younger, whether it was selling sneakers or helping my stepfather at his electronics shop. When I first went into college, I really wanted to go and study. And in Japan, I actually just had met my wife, but at that time we were just dating, and she moved back to Japan, and I really wanted to go over there and be able to study. So this was my first year in college. Didn't have the money to go and do that, so I worked all kinds of random jobs that summer, from selling Cutco knives, which probably a lot of people have done, which was a great experience, by the way, and I did quite well at that. But I also lay down sawed, like, big bales of brass, heavy ones. I worked in a lighting factory, moving boxes, even though I had a bit of an allergy at that time to dust mite. Not a fun experience, but I did what I had to do to get the money to go. And so at the same time, kind of applying our business in the background and making some money on the side. But you're right, I wasn't formally trained in working for a large organization or working for a consulting business. We just started applying what we knew. I was reading a lot, studying a lot, and then just applying it directly into the world of business and improving from there.
So then I have a very what I think is going to be an interesting question. If that's how you grew up in the business world, was university necessary?
No, I don't think.
Wow,
it was.
You wasted no time in response on that one.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of education, and when I say that, I don't want people to take that in the wrong way. I think there's a lot of value in education, and some people love it. My wife absolutely loved studying. From the time I was young, all I cared about was sports, and I didn't care about school. I didn't actually read a full book until I was probably in grade 10. When I had to read books for school, I would get the Coles Notes versions, the summarized versions, and get through those, or I'd have someone update me on what I should have been reading. I wasn't interested in that. And then even when I went into university, while I started to enjoy the process of learning a little bit more, I moved from sitting always at the back of the class scribbling notes to actually, or scribbling drawings or whatever, to sitting at the front of the class actually taking notes. But I did that because I wanted to finish that process as quickly as possible, and I just wanted to do a good job at it. And I also, early on in university, there were some grants and scholarships available if you did very well. And so I figured, well, hey, I can make some money to go and travel and head over to Japan if I work hard at this. So that's really what I did. But when I was in Japan, I was now midway through my 4 years in university. I was building up the business over there while I was in university initially, and things were going really well. And I actually thought to myself, maybe I should just forget university and continue building this business. Gave it some thought. I asked my parents for their opinion, and they said, yeah, listen, you can always go back to Japan, finish. Our suggestion is to finish. Of course, they came from a different background in terms of schooling, but I thought, that's not a bad idea. Let me go back. I'm going to go back. I'm going to finish my last year at that time, because I was actually now at my third year doing as an exchange student in Japan as I was building the business. So I went back, finished my fourth year university at the University of British Columbia. Couldn't wait to get out of there. I was this fourth year student walking around lost on this huge, massive campus of 40,000 plus people, asking first year students where this building was, because I didn't know where I was. But I got it done, and I went right back to Japan as soon as that was finished, and continued to build the business from there.
Well, here's something that I'm finding interesting as you keep talking. You seem to have an uncanny ability to do something that I think a lot more entrepreneurs could benefit from, simply meaning you seem to be able to keep your goal present, not just in front of you, not just aware, but present. And you're allowing it to continually guide your actions with that, with such clarity. So I'm curious to know where that comes from for you.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I don't necessarily know there is an answer for me that jumps out, but my assumption, my guess is I could trace it back to my early days when I, moved to this country and what felt like an outsider. I had to make decisions. I had to work towards a goal, and then later when I got into sports, there's always a goal, right? There's always a place, like a destination that you need to get to, and so I always had my eye on that. I remember being in university and being told, like my first year in college, actually, it wasn't even a university. I was in a program that was called an Asian Studies program. So you learn all about Asia. It was very focused on like geography and history and culture and language. But I was interested in business. I've always, from a young age, been interested in business and commerce. And so I had to figure out, how could I start taking classes that would also include like business, like whether it was accounting or international law or marketing and so forth. But I wasn't allowed. But that didn't stop me. I just decided, I'm going to go to the head of the program, the dean of this program, and have a conversation. They said, listen, no, you can't do that. That's not how this works. I said, well, but why not? Like, I want to be a happy student. This is why I want to do it. I think others could also maybe benefit from it. And long story short, they ended up changing the program, because of that. So it's something that I think anyone can do. It's just a matter of deciding, do you really want something? Like, how committed are you to whatever the decision is or the goals that you have, and then do your actions support that commitment? And unfortunately for a lot of people, they don't, but we all have the choice.
But and here's what's coming clear for me. As you continue to talk, I'm going in the back of my head, this is why he's a great consultant, because I'm assuming what you're bringing to the table is this same mindset, the same ability to get really, really clear. So with that, I've got to ask, when a client approaches you and says, hey, we're at, whatever figure we're at, we'd like to increase that by 20 to 30%. I'm going to assume that some of what we're talking about right now is exactly what you're doing, because it would only stand to reason to me that you would function that way. Am I close? Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey, and what I want to say to you is that the number one mistake that I have ever made in business, number one, has been waiting too long to do the books, waiting too long to get the bookkeepers, the accountants, the CPAs, the CFOs involved, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. That mistake cost me over 6 figures, and now for a significant discount, you have the ability to get your books together using FreshBooks. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. Again, that's gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. FreshBooks is the easy to use software designed to help you, the small business owner, the freelancer, get organized and save time on invoicing, getting paid faster, keeping those books in order so that it becomes a bonus for you to do your taxes as opposed to a burden. Go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary and get started today. And now let's get back to the rest of the story.
A lot of growth, like 20-30% growth for a lot of consultants can happen actually very quickly, because I think the keyword that you hit on in terms of being clear, I mean, our coaching program that we run is actually called the Clarity Coaching Program, because what we really help consultants to do is to get clear on the foundation kind of building blocks that are required to have a very successful consulting business and be able to grow it. A 20 to 30% increase can often just come from shifting your structure and positioning of your fees. Much greater growth, 100%, 200%, 300% growth can happen when you start to add in a few other blocks into it. But I think in all business, it's oftentimes people are thinking about that in order to grow, that they need to add more, they need to do more. But in fact, I've always found that subtracting, looking at what you can remove from the equation to get clear, to get more focused, and then to see a greater impact and effect is actually ends up being more successful.
Okay, so I think we need to say that again. So you're saying for a lot of people, business individuals, if they want to grow, the best way to grow is to subtract?
Yeah, do less, not more.
Interesting. Got it.
I'll give you an example of that. I mean, these days, what I typically see, and this might be different for you, Jay, but a lot of people are thinking, okay, I want to grow. And so they're going to go out and look for what is the best practice around doing that. And they're going to start then, doing some new kind of technology or using some tool or trying some new method. And they're going to get a little ways into that. And then all of a sudden they're going to say, okay, this is kind of working, but not really. What else could be working better? And then they're going to go off and try and, add on something else now completely different. And so they end up going in this loop of trying a little bit of different stuff, dipping their toes in, seeing a little bit of an impact from, but not really. And then it keeps going on and on and on. But if you look at the most successful businesses over time, there's a great book on this topic by Richard Koch called Simplify. The most successful businesses are always very, very focused. They're not adding tons of products or tons of services from day one. They usually have a very focused set of offerings, and they figure out how to deliver it in the most simplistic way. And that's really where their power comes from.
Interesting. What's funny is that when you were talking this time about keeping things simple, for whatever reason, and it's not even a place I like to go, but In-N-Out, I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're a burger chain here in the US. It's burgers, fries, shakes.
Yep.
You don't go, that's what they got. If you want that, go there. If you don't go there. But they always have an insane line all the time. And I think that would be a perfect example of what you're talking about. But how does a business owner determine what's the extra and where the point is to what's the drive deep?
Yeah, I mean, the first question I would encourage people to ask, or just to kind of analyze in their current situation, is what are you doing right now that is actually having the greatest impact? If you do a little analysis, you'll often find that your greatest growth or greatest source of revenue can be attributed to a smaller kind of set or subset of what you're doing, because not all activities are equal in their impact and effectiveness. So by honing in on what is actually producing the greatest result and then removing the things that are not producing a great result, that then allows you to focus more time, energy, resources on where you are seeing the better result or greater success. And that will then start to compound and accelerate the compounding, which will lead to greater overall growth, and typically done in a manner which faces a lot less resistance than trying to do a whole bunch of stuff that isn't necessarily working well for you.
No doubt. We don't know what you're talking about. We've never been down those rabbit holes at all. Not even once. So with all of that being said, what would you say, I mean, in the individuals that you've worked with, in the businesses that you've been exposed to and that you've helped grow, what are the things that stop us? Like, for the entrepreneur that's listening and saying, yeah, I want to grow, but okay, Mike, help me figure out what's in my way. What are those common roadblocks that you have found that are in the way of the growth that many of us are seeking?
Yeah, it's a great question. The number one thing that is in people's ways, it's actually the same for every single person, and it's themselves.
Huh. Okay. Explain.
So typically, what's holding us back is not a lack of knowledge.
Okay.
It's not that we don't have the right strategy or the right tactics. It's our mindset. This is really what I share in the Elite Consulting Mind. Filled with kind of 16 stories of the most common mindset roadblocks or challenges that I have observed over the last 18 plus years that consultants face. Mm-hmm. But they're directly applicable to entrepreneurs as well. Right? Even if you think about, and for all everyone listening right now, think about something that you've wanted to accomplish or some goal that you have. And if you really ask yourself, well, do you know what you need to do to get there? Quite often we say, yeah, I know what I need to do to get there. So then the question becomes, okay, it's not an issue then of knowledge or skill. It's a question of why aren't you doing what you need to do to get there? And an example of that would be, let's say that you're a consultant and you want to grow your business. Well, you know that you need to talk to a prospective buyer in order to land a deal, right? To be able to send a proposal and have a really meaningful conversation. Well, then why are you not doing that? Why are you spending so much time on social media or on trying to figure out webinars or playing with your website or updating your business plan, right? Why are you doing those things when you could identify an ideal client and just reach out to them directly? Now, not every single person you reach out to is going to say yes to having a conversation with you, but you'll raise your chances of having that conversation by taking action. So instead of just building things, you need to actually get out of the building. And so the question is, why aren't you doing that? And that's really what, it comes back to mindset, because oftentimes people have fears. They worry about what will happen if someone says no. They want everything to be perfect because they believe that having things just perfect, their materials and so forth, will give them a better chance of seeing results. But the most successful people know that it's not about having things all perfect. It's getting out there as quickly as possible, because that's where you actually start to get real feedback from your ideal clients, from the marketplace. And then you can incorporate that feedback into what you're doing to make it better. But if you're always holding back taking that action because you want things to be just perfect, and you're spending your time on activities that make you feel like you're productive, but in fact, really what you're doing is you're spending your time on activities that are not productive, right? They're activities that are easy and comfortable for you to do, right? Then you're holding your real true potential from being realized.
So Okay. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment, because I know someone listening, they would want to say to you, but Michael, if I get my website done, or if I finish working on my podcast, or if I finish working on these videos in the YouTube channel, then I can reach more people. And isn't that important?
So the answer is yes, sure, it's important, but it's all about what stage you're at in your business right now. So as an example, take let's say writing articles. Writing articles are great, right? But do you have a platform to get those articles in front of your ideal clients right now? If you're just publishing lots of content on your blog, that's a long-term game. You might be comfortable doing that, but is that the best path for you to take if your number one goal right now is to generate more cash flow and to land more deals? Probably not. So you need to be very clear on what activity or what action is going to produce the result that you want based on the stage of business that you're at right now. So yes, updating your website or working on a podcast, all these things can work. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that any of these things are not effective. I'm not going to bash all of them or any of them, because they can all work. The question is not can they work or not. The question is what is most effective and efficient and will have the greatest impact for your specific situation right now.
Got it. Now, because the reason I wanted to ask that, because again, not only are there a number of people listening who can't ask you that question, I know that's what you're thinking, but then there's also this other big monster. We'll call it, just social media, etc. But really, what I think is the conversation is, well, Michael, if I am out there focused on one person, how do I make sure that if that person says no, then I have another person to talk to when I come back to the office? Because I need a way for my marketing to keep working while I'm trying to, help one particular individual. Because otherwise they're in this roller coaster. At least that's what I've seen. Sure.
I mean, the key to that is setting up what we call a marketing engine. It's making sure that you have a system and process in place that allows you to get in front of ideal clients on a consistent, ongoing basis, right? So that you're not going through that roller coaster. That allows you to build up a pipeline of opportunities. So you're always having different prospects, buyers, prospective clients moving through at different stages. That is critical. But
hold on. But doesn't this feel a little bit like a chicken or the egg? Like, which one comes first? I can only do so much in any one given day. If I'm supposed to build this engine, if I'm not building the engine because I'm working with a person, then how do I decide which one comes first?
Well, what comes first is going out and meeting with prospective clients, setting up whether that's in person or on the phone. That having that first conversation, if that's the stage you're at, like just getting started, that's what you want to focus on rather than just getting all of your materials ready, because you could spend a lot of time trying to perfect, let's say, your messaging on what you think is important, but when you actually put it out to the marketplace, the market might not want that at all. A lot of us have been through that experience. I know personally. I've built a product about several years ago. Sam and I put $20,000 into developing this, only to find out the market didn't actually want it. So we had to completely shift our whole focus, and luckily we were able to turn that business very profitable and sell it later on. But it was that was a really interesting learning experience, because we thought we knew what the market wanted, but clearly we didn't. So really what I'm encouraging people to do here is just to get out, right? To figure out for your specific situation right now, what do you feel that it will have the greatest impact and that will move you as close as possible to the opportunity to make a sale. And for most people in professional services, that is really about getting in front of ideal clients. And so is there an event that you can go to right now? Is there a place that you can speak at right now? Can you just identify who your ideal clients are on LinkedIn and start reaching out and building meaningful relationships with them right now? As you start doing that, yes, you're going to start landing proposal opportunities. You're going to have then clients that you're working with. You're going to have to start to balance your time between delivery and doing your marketing. But the key thing is that you're always working on your marketing so that you always have a pipeline of opportunities and you don't have all of your eggs in one basket. You're diversifying and you're building real stability into your business.
You know what's funny, Michael? It's like you knew the next question I was going, because I was going to keep playing this devil's advocate position for a little while, because I was going to say, But Mike, now if I'm out there working with it and working to get somebody, eventually someone's going to say yes, but now I have to spend all my time delivering. How do I keep the marketing going so I'm not stressed in the back of my head?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of consultants that reach out to us who are in that exact same situation. They've either been working kind of as a contractor, part of an agency, calling themselves consultants, but really they haven't been building their own business. They've been building someone else's, or they've had just, one client, all their eggs in one basket. It's been a big project, and now that's starting to wind down or end, and like the next client isn't in sight. So the key thing is, even as you start, building your business and you're taking on more clients and you're very busy with delivery, you always have to have your foot on the pedal. Because if you don't, think about it like a car. You take your foot off the pedal, you might coast for a little while, and that's all fine. But you're going to start to really slow down, and then the car is going to come to an abrupt halt, and then you're going to be left kind of scratching your head. So as you take on more clients and you're doing more and more delivery, you may take your foot off the pedal a little bit, or ease off, I should say, so that you're not doing as much marketing, as much outreach. And you also shift the type of marketing and outreach that you're doing. In the early days, you should be doing a lot more, direct outreach, because the other stuff is more longer term. But as you start getting more clients, now you can start doing the other forms of marketing that are longer term, have more impact, kind of reaching more people at one time, call it articles or speaking or doing podcasts or things of that nature. But those typically take a little while, right, to start seeing an impact from. So if you do that too early on, then you're going to have, you'll be waiting a while. But as you start picking up more clients, you shift your marketing more a little bit onto the long term, less necessarily on the direct outreach. But again, you're building up this pipeline. So when you're doing more delivery, right, you're not taking your foot completely off the marketing pedal. You're just easing off a little bit to give yourself more time to deliver, but you're making sure that you're always still bringing in, new prospective clients into that mix.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. So I know that there's also a number of people who are listening right now who want to find out more about what you've got going on, maybe even, research some of your books or even connect with you directly. What's going to be the best way for them to track you down?
Yeah, for sure. They can go to consultingsuccess.com. And if you go there, we have a 51-page guide for people who want to grow their consulting business. And of course, that's free. So you can just go to consultingsuccess.com to get that. If you're wanting to take a look at some of the books and so forth we put out for consultants, you can find those on Amazon. The most recent one is The Elite Consulting Mind.
Excellent. So as we wind down here, I have a final question for you. The persons listening, there's probably a number of people who have reached a decision point. They've listened. They're like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to become that entrepreneur. I'm going to put on my cape and go out there. They may even be standing in front of what I like to call the superhero outfit store right now. But like I know, when we reach these points of decision, oftentimes what happens is that we have a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice. And it usually says things like, who are you? And why on earth do you think anyone's going to buy a service from you? Or what? You're going to consult who? And you're going to do what in business? Like, really? And for some people, they're even related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that today is going to be different, though. They're actually going to take action. They're going to follow through, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
Great question, first of all. Number one, give some thought to who really is your ideal client. Who can you help the most? Where do you have the greatest experience and track record and have achieved results previously? And where do you see the biggest demand? Like who right now, where is that market that is hungry? That's number one. Number two, then reach out to those people. And you don't need to sell them anything right away, but start building a relationship with them. Start a conversation, whether that's taking them out for a coffee, having a phone call, engaging in a conversation through LinkedIn, or attending an event where they are. Get in front of them and start to build that relationship. This is not a consumer sale necessarily, right? It's going to take some time because we're not talking about selling a $200 gizmo. We're talking, in my world anyways, of selling 5 and 6 and sometimes even 7-figure service offerings. So you want to start to establish that relationship with them. And I think if you just get very clear on those two things, who really is your ideal client, and then start to find out where they are right now, where can you engage with them right away. And you can do that effectively through LinkedIn or other platforms, and literally within 24 hours, start to connect and start to engage in a conversation. And that'll be a really good first step to get things moving, because you'll be able to build on that and go from there.
Excellent. I absolutely appreciate your wisdom, your knowledge, and your insight, and most importantly, taking the time to share it with us here today at the Cashflow Diary, sir.
My pleasure. Been a lot of fun.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means today you're going over to consultingsuccess.com. You're downloading that article or that book that's 51 pages of killer information that I know you need. But more importantly than that, you're going to take some direct action. Why not get on LinkedIn? Why not reach out to someone? Why not reach out to many someones right now? Because you know, like I know, it's always the right time for more revenue. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.